Yeah, I'll start. So today is April 1st, 2020. We're here interviewing Shari Zhang and Wenjia online as everything has been the case moving online in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. And this is the Houston Asian American Archive. My name is Ann Shi. Thank you so much for being part of it, and thank you for contributing your valuable time.
Sure, no problem.
So maybe we should start with Sherry, if that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, can you tell us about when and where were you born and your childhood, and share a bit of your memories that you still have?
Okay. Well, I was born in 1973, August 12th in Beijing, and I lived there till I was 12. I grew up mostly in my grandmother's house. My parents, was a fairly common thing, I guess, in China, where both parents were working during that time. And my grandmother had the big house where all of my aunts had their children there when they were young so that they could both work. So I would only go home with my parents on the weekends. And so I have a lot of memories of having a lot of freedom in my childhood because I was living with my grandmother and my cousins, and we would play outside a lot. And just, after school, we would drop off our backpacks and just go outside until it was dinner time. And they called us in for dinner. And that's when my parents and all the other aunts and uncles would come home from work, and we'd all eat our dinner together. And then they would go off on their own to their own homes in other parts of the city. And we would spend the night with my grandmother. And our school was just 5 minutes walk from, my grandmother's house. So it was very convenient. So my memories of childhood are very, very idyllic, almost like a fairy tale. So.
Wow. So which was the neighborhood that you lived in?
The neighborhood was just behind Wangfujing and 10-minute walking distance from Tiananmen Square. It was right in the center of the city. And my grandfather, who I've never met because he passed away in 1968, he was a very, you can say a pretty famous political figure in China, even the earlier part of the century in China. He was Dr. Sun Yat-sen's, they call him what, right-hand man. He was a general, and he was a governor of Hunan province twice before the communist, the communists took over in 1949. But he switched his allegiance to the communist side during that civil war, and quote unquote liberated Hunan province peacefully, because it was a losing war for the nationalists. So, but he was a nationalist. He was a nationalist general, and he did not like Chiang Kai-shek. And anyway, that's another whole part of history. So I grew up. He was a revered figure in my family, and he had a certain status. Even in communist China, he was still honored. And there's a famous picture of Chairman Mao rowing a boat for him when my grandfather visited him in Zhongnanhai. And and he was one of the protected people during the Cultural Revolution, so by Premier Zhou Enlai. So they didn't do anything to him during the Cultural Revolution. So that's my family background. So I would say it's kind of an unusual family. It was aristocratic, but back then nobody had money in China, but we still lived a fairly privileged life. We had maids in the house, cooks, and my grandmother didn't have to take care of us herself. There were other people to take care of our physical needs and cook for us and all of that. So compared to like my classmates, it was really a lot of privilege. We had like sit-down toilets in the bathrooms and all of that stuff that nobody else had even heard of back then. And water for shower and all of 2 bathrooms in the house. In the 70s, that was unheard of, really. So that's kind of my.
Yeah. So how did you come to the U.S.
Okay, so my mom, when China was first opening up in the 80s, she was working as a tour guide among the very first influx of American tourists. she's one of these very open people that makes friends with new people all the time very easily. So she befriended this American couple when they were on one of the, I don't remember, it was Tibet or somewhere they went to. They talked on the bus, and they just invited her to come to the US to study. If you ever want to come to the US, they said, you can stay with us and we'll sponsor you. So she took them up on the offer, basically, and at the age of 40 decided to immigrate. Not immigrate, I guess that was not the intention. It was to study.
Mm.
And they were both English professors at Mississippi State University, which is in Starkville, Mississippi, a little town in northeast Mississippi. And so in 1985, she just left. She decided to, and back then I was 11, so I didn't understand what that was all about. And she left, and it was just still, I was living with my grandmother. So nothing really changed for me.
Mm.
I guess I missed her, but it didn't really strike me as anything, life-changing that she left to go to America. So, and then she came back during winter break. I remember this in 1986, well, the end of 85 into 86. And she just said, you're moving to America with me. No, I had no choice. I was like in tears because I was like the top student in class. I was going to get to go to the best middle school. And I mean, that was my life. It's going to be uprooted just because she said I was moving to America.
Mm.
It was like literally the following week.
Wow.
That she got me on a plane, and we were in Starkville, Mississippi, and I had to start school on January 6th of 1986. I remember that first day, my nose was bleeding. I was in tears. I didn't know any English. It was very traumatic. So.
You can imagine.
Yeah.
Wow. So did you still get in touch with any of the friends you had back then?
In my grade school, well, now that we have WeChat, of course, there's a grade school group, and I do see what they're doing. I try not to get on it very much, but it's a lot of chatter. But I do. They do know where I am, and I do remember a lot of them. I was the leader of the whole school. I had like the 3 stripes on my arms that, like, what do you call those? 小队长、中队长、大队长. I was the head of the young pioneers. So, I led all of my whole school in activities, and represented them at meetings and all of that. So, good memories, I think.
So did you start playing the piano back then?
I did, but not seriously. I mean, really the person that inspired me to get into music was my teacher I met in Mississippi about 2 years after I came here. And that was an incredible coincidence too. I had entered this piano contest, and I actually messed up really badly. I had this huge memory slip. And so, I was very discouraged. But then this old man, he was already retired. He was 65 by then already. And he came up to me and said, I see a lot of talent in you. Would you like to come study with me? And he basically changed my life. I was at his house, 2-3 hours for lessons. And not only did we have lessons, he nurtured me and helped me. We'd listen to records. He would demonstrate for me, and we would eat lunch together. And it was just like he took me in, he mentored me, way more than just a teacher. So, and that's how I fell in love with music and decided that was what I wanted to do.
So besides your teacher, did your family members support you?
My parents knew nothing of music, classical music at least. And I would actually say they didn't really support me because, it's like, we didn't have much money because even though we were from privilege, nobody really had a lot of money back then. And they struggled. When you come to a new country when you're 40, and my dad was even older, 45, and then you finish your degrees, and there's a lot of struggles. It's hard to find a job. It's not what they thought. I think back then people come to America thinking that things are going to be easy, that there's jobs and there's money and everybody can make it. But their English was okay, but not great. So so they had their own struggles. So they didn't really have time to pay attention to what I was doing. And they, like many parents, they fought a lot when there's, hardships. So piano and music was kind of my way to escape from that, I'd say. It's like, so I can shut the door and be in my room for 2-3 hours just playing the piano, and I didn't have to deal with all the noise in the world. And I think that's more like what it is. It's not that they didn't support me, it's really they didn't understand what I was doing, and they were too busy with their own lives to really be interested in what I was doing. So.
Yeah, so also reading from what you wrote, you said you worked as a kitchen staff in a buffet restaurant when you were...
Yeah, I think that is mostly well, like I said, we didn't have money. I mean, we lived in a little apartment, and I'm sure it was also like a big come down for my parents too, because like when you're at the top somewhere else and you come to a new place and you're just like everybody else, it's hard. So, and I didn't have any of my own. I knew they didn't have money, so I always knew that I needed to make my own living and be independent. So that was the job that was available. It was like right next to my high school. Literally, I could walk from school after school and just go to work, and then have my boyfriend pick me up afterwards and take me home. So of course I didn't drive back then either, so I was dependent as far as that. But yeah, so that's what I decided to do, just to have a little income. Same thing with college. I knew I had to go somewhere where I got a scholarship, where I got a full scholarship, so that I didn't have to ask my parents to pay for it, because I knew they couldn't pay for it. And I didn't want to take out a loan. I didn't really even understand what that was back then. So I ended up going to OU because it's one of the few places that offers full tuition plus room and board for National Merit Scholars. So yeah, so I mean, I don't know if I had a goal like very specifically to do that, but I did. I mean, whatever I'm very competitive, so I'm gonna want to be at the top no matter where I am. So that's what I did. I was valedictorian and all of that. But I had a lot of help and mentors along the way. I have to say, I'm one of those people that seeks like deep relationships with my teachers. So I think one of the first people that was influential was my 8th grade English teacher, who I remember studying the Diary of Anne Frank with him, and all of these, I mean, just falling in love with literature. If I hadn't been a musician, that's what I would do, literature and English and writing. But he inspired me. And then all of my English teachers after that inspired me to live this rich, full life in not just in music, but in all the fabric of life that's involved in the arts, whether it's literature or art or music. I'm still interested in all of that, or philosophy, or anyway.
So you went to University of Maryland and University of Ohio, you said?
Not Ohio. OU is Oklahoma, University of Oklahoma. So that was my undergraduate.
I see.
Yeah.
And how was the training between the two of them?
Okay, so OU is not really known as a music school. It was, as far as piano, it was known as what they call a pedagogy school, which is more geared towards when you graduate, you become a music teacher or a piano teacher. So because it wasn't so heavily performance oriented, and so I was, what shall I say? I don't want to say it this way necessarily, but I had a lot of opportunities because I was so heavily performance oriented in a teaching school. Because my goal was not necessarily to become a music teacher. I didn't really have a goal in that sense, because I'm not a virtuoso pianist, so I didn't think I was going to have a career in music. I didn't really have illusions about that. But because of my broad interest, I think I wanted eventually to become like a professor of music at a college. That was my initial impulse, to share just the knowledge of the broad-based knowledge of music. So I had thought about going to musicology and all of that. But at OU, I got the opportunity to perform a lot. I was in the orchestra. I was the orchestra pianist. I was the orchestra librarian. I played a lot of chamber music. I befriended the string faculty. So I wasn't just focused on the piano solo performance part. I really branched out and was able to explore so many things because it was a small school as far as music was concerned. And there weren't a lot of really highly performance oriented people. They were there to get the teaching part of it. So because I was so interested in performance, I got to do all of those things because that's what I wanted to do. So then Maryland is, I would say I was not as happy as at Maryland because it was a commuter school. It wasn't a sense of community that you had in an undergraduate school where everybody knew each other, and we would hang out in the practice room lounges and just, do projects together and lots of recital planning, lots of rehearsing, just on our own, for fun, friends playing together. In Maryland, people just came in and left. They would come in for their lessons and then they would leave. So it wasn't as many opportunities to really get to know people. And by then, people are more anxious about their careers. So it's a little bit more self-centered, I think, instead of just for the pure love of music. So, yeah, so it wasn't, I didn't love Maryland. It wasn't until after I graduated that I met Wei.
Oh.
So I finished my master's degree there in Maryland in 2 years. And then Wei came to Maryland, 1998. So he had come from Oberlin. Now he can tell you about that later. But I guess he was looking for a pianist to play for him on one of his juries or something, right? And I told him I would play, and he said he couldn't pay me because he was a poor student. So I said, I'm not playing for the money. So anyway, it was it the Brahms? I mean, I still remember the piece that we played is the Brahms E flat major viola sonata, and it's a difficult piece. It's beautiful. Anyway, we've had the opportunity to perform that a few times now, and it's it's the piece that brought us together. Say it's very special.
Mm-hmm. So what was the hardest challenges that you remember, like through pursuing music?
Well, like in my case, my education was so on and off in piano. Like I started when I was maybe 6 or 7. I didn't really even have a teacher for a while. Like I think my aunt, we had an old upright piano in our Beijing home that was brought back, I don't know, like in the 50s or something. I don't even know how that, I think it was my grandfather brought it back from somewhere in his travels. And it was just sitting there. And my youngest aunt played a little bit. So she would just sit there and I remember just faintly just playing along with her a little bit. And then finally we found a piano teacher who coincidentally lives in Houston now, amazingly. I ran into her at Jones Hall on one of my first years in Houston. I was like, here's my piano teacher from when I was 7. How is that possible? But they've immigrated here as well. So we would go to her house, once a week, but it wasn't very formal. It wasn't serious at all. It's because my parents didn't really understand the discipline it took. So I didn't practice. It's just like any child. It's not your major. You don't focus on that. So and then I stopped for a long time. Even with her, I stopped for a long time and then restarted. And then by the time I came to this country, there was a big stretch where I didn't have a piano teacher because we were just starting here. And then finally, there was a church pianist that taught me for like a year, but it wasn't very organized. So I feel like all those breaks, those were difficult.
Mm.
But until I met the teacher, Dr. Thompson is his name, Harold Thompson. He got his doctorate at LSU, Louisiana State University. Until I met him, and then it was just really focused. Basically, I think my high school years. That's when I started practicing 2-3 hours a day. But still, there were challenges because I didn't even have my own piano for a while. That's why I went to his house to practice, and spend hours and hours at his house just practicing. Finally, I think some kind charitable person in Starkville donated a piano, and paid for the rental of that piano, $20 a month or something, because my parents couldn't afford it. And I think they actually paid for my lessons too. So it was like that. So those were the challenges, I think, just physically not being able to have a piano all the time to practice on, and being dependent on other people's charity to even have that consistency in having lessons and practicing.
So that professor, was he at OU or at?
Dr. Thompson, he was my high school piano teacher, the one that I talked about. He met me at that piano competition and said he wanted to teach me. So yeah, he was, I think, from the age 14 through 17, he was my teacher.
I see.
Yeah.
And you talked about you had a lot of passion in other disciplines like literature and philosophy. Was that the reason that you went into like writing and doing more like a critique music kind of role?
Well, the writing thing came about really serendipitously. That was just really a couple years ago. You're talking about me writing for the magazine, right? For Arts and Culture. Yeah, it suits me really well because I get to meet all of these wonderful creative artists and learn about their process and what they do. That came about because the Houston Grand Opera did a production, the 30th anniversary. They were the ones that premiered the opera Nixon in China 30 some years ago. So for the 30-year anniversary, they decided to put the opera on again. And, we went to the opera together. And then a few days later, the Chronicle theater opera critic, Wei Huanchen, he wrote a scathing review of the opera, of the production, basically talking about yellow face and lack of Asian representation, stereotyping of Asians. And a friend of mine who used to work at the classical radio station sent me a link to the article and said, "What do you think of this?" People were kind of shocked because the opera did not expect this reaction at all. And he hardly reviewed the music of the opera. It was just all political. It was just all about identity politics. So he asked me what I thought, and I read the review, and I was shocked too, because I was like, this is not what I got from going to the opera. I loved it. I thought it was a great, amazing production. And then all the things he said were just, it bothered me. It bothered me that he took such a personal and kind of very small view of this thing without understanding the historical context of opera, without doing his research. So immediately I wrote this, he's like, "Why don't you write something to the Chronicle?" So I did. So I wrote, and they ended up printing it not only as an opinion piece, but as an editorial. So, I mean, you can look that up. It's in there, if you just type in Chang and Nixon in China, that counter review is going to pop up. So that's when I wrote that. And it became kind of a big deal because there was an Asia Society discussion on this, a discussion of this topic at the Asia Society afterwards. And the people at, what's that organization? The Pacific, I don't know which organization in Houston it is, but they approached me because they were about to go mount like a protest in front of the opera of this thing and blow this up into this big deal. And I was like, please don't, without understanding the context. and there was happened to be like an opera lover in that group, and he, approached me personally, and we sat down with the president of that group, and I kind of, we were trying to de-escalate the situation, and I suggested that he just directly go talk to the director of the opera, the Patrick Summers and Perrin Leach, to set up a meeting, and they can have an open discussion about this thing. Dialogue, that's what works. You have to communicate. Sometimes these things just, they don't have to be blown out of proportion. So that's when the opera formed the Cultural Advisory Committee, and I was invited to be on that, just as one of the voices. I mean, it's important to hear their voice and everybody's voice, and it's not that their concerns are not valid, but to have an understanding of the challenges of that. So anyway, that's how I got into writing. That article got noticed by Nancy Wozny, chief editor of Arts and Culture magazine, and she contacted me, and we sat down, and she said, would you like to write for me? And I've been writing for her ever since. I mean, it's only been since 2017, so 3 years now, but I think I've written like over 20 pieces for them already. These, and that's just a side. I mean, I don't do it for the money. As in many things, I don't do things for the money. So I have my day job is teaching music at a preschool, actually. So, and that's not even what I trained for, but that's what I've been doing ever since coming to Houston for the past 20 years.
Yeah, can you tell us a bit more about your pre-education teaching?
You mean my early childhood music? That also, things just happen. I let things happen. When I first moved to Houston, I didn't have a job. Mm-hmm. I didn't write down everything in that bio. I did a little teaching, had a little studio of my own teaching at home. But when you don't know anybody in this new town, it's hard to get a studio started. And I soon discovered that teaching private piano was not my forte, that I didn't really enjoy it. When students don't practice, I would get moody and, things like that. So, but still, I taught for a while. And while I was doing this teaching, there was a lovely lady who was on bed rest for her pregnancy, and she had advertised at a music store that she needed somebody to take over her students for a while. So I did that, and one of the students ended up being my connection to this preschool music job, because that little boy went to a school called the House at Pooh Corner, which is a very famous but kind of a little bit secret prestigious preschool in Houston. They're kind of, a lot of the kids there go to St. John's and Kincaid, end up, so it's one of those schools where you get in because you have legacy. Like your parents went there, or even it's on the third generation now. The school's been there since the 1950s. It's a wonderful school. So that's why I've been there for 20 years without ever wanting to leave that school, because it's just a very unique environment. It's a little old-fashioned, but in a really good way. A lot of playground time, partly Montessori, but just about being a child and about the whole development of the child. So, and they needed a music teacher because their old music teacher was retiring. And I just found the job to be, it just fit my personality, that I don't do well teaching one-on-one, but I do well teaching in a group and having that energy of a classroom. And just all I do is like sing and dance with the kids and have fun with them. And, they're having fun, I'm having fun. And I'm introducing great classical music to them, and we're doing a lot of movement. So yeah, that's what I do now. So my profession.
So besides teaching, what else are you doing to advocate for earlier music education?
You mean advocate for music education? Okay, well, let's see. I feel like I don't want to say expert, but I have a lot of experience now teaching this kind of big group classes, and I haven't dedicated a whole lot of time to how to share that with other people, partly because I teach in a very private school environment, and a lot of things I teach, I don't want to say it's like a secret recipe, like that you're not supposed to share with other people. But I think, especially in this coronavirus crisis now, we're sharing everything online
Yeah.
these days. I am interested in, I've been to a lot of conferences where different expert teachers present things, artist teachers that show you how they teach. I think I'm leaning towards that area where I'm going to present myself at these conferences where I can share my teaching skills. So that is something I'm still looking forward to do that I have not necessarily tried yet, but I think I can do. So, I mean, I've done things like even going with my daughter who plays the violin to Houston Public Library, and we would put on a show for a bunch of kids, just something I came up with, where they can move and sing and some basic rhythm things, and just have fun with music and introducing some great classical music to them in the process. So I've done some little projects like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll continue to, it's project based. Like, whatever I think of that works for a particular environment, I can do it. I feel confident that it can be done.
Got it. And are you teaching online with these?
No, I'm not. Oh yeah, right now I am. Right now, I'm not using Zoom or anything. I just make videos and I just send it directly to the parents.
Yeah.
So just through like Vimeo or YouTube or whatever links that I send them.
Yeah, great. So I'll let you take a break and probably
Perfect.
later.
Here's
And here's Wei, and thank you. So
sure.
if you wouldn't mind, can you also? Oh yeah.
I'll get him to be on the center, and I'm gonna go get some water for myself.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Moving on to you. If you wouldn't mind sharing with us where you were born and how did you come to the States and some memories about your childhood, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. I was born in Wuhan, so now the most famous city in the world. So that was 1969. I grew up in this on campus of this music school. Now it's called Wuhan Conservatory. So my dad was teaching, and later he became the headmaster of the middle school division of that conservatory. So we live inside the campus. So it's kind of a very nice environment because it's kind of a college and school. It's very safe. A lot of music. So naturally, and my dad wanted me to play music too. So that's how I started to play violin. So I lived there. I went to school. I finished my music training and went to the school, the same school where I lived. And later on, I went to Beijing and studied Beijing Conservatory, Central Conservatory.
Mm-hmm.
So in 1996, that's the year I came to the States. I went to Oberlin Conservatory to study. Yeah, what else?
And I remember you talked about a choice between viola and violin. How did that transition happen?
First, when I was in high school,
Mm.
I was still playing violin back then, and there was no violist in school.
Mm.
So I have three friends, two of them are violinists, one cellist. So they want to play some chamber music. They want to play a string quartet. But we don't have viola player. So they came to me, we sit down, we start talking like who's gonna play the viola? And because none of us know how to play the viola. So at the end, we all decided, I was the one to play. So I had to learn it on my own. So I got some music, and I had to learn a different class, and read some different music. So I had to figure out a way to read it and quickly translate it into fingering and play on the instrument. So I sit down with the music, and I trying to figure out what's the way to do it quickly. So I spent about 45 minutes, and I figured out the system. So I can see the notes, immediately know where to play. So that's how it started. And then we formed this string quartet, and we start playing concerts. That's my senior year. So of course, at the end of my senior year, I was thinking about my college, what I wanted to do, where I want to go. Wuhan Conservatory, that's where I was. They offered me just like you can automatically take you in to the college part. You don't have to audition. You don't have to take any exam. You're automatically in. But the condition is you cannot go audition for other schools. So you have to commit to stay there. So I turned it down because I felt like at that point I didn't want to stay in Wuhan. I want to go somewhere, bigger, somewhere higher. And also part of me just wanted to kind of leave my parents because I wanted to be independent. Because I felt like at that time I was kind of a little bit privileged because my dad was the principal, and he's, and I grew up in that school, knew everybody from the head of the whole school, from janitor, anybody. I just feel like this is too comfortable. I was born there, I grew up there, and I went to school there, and then I'm going to continue like that. So I'm going to pretty much, I know I'm going to be there forever. And it's going to be a comfortable life, but that's kind of, I didn't want that anymore. I want some challenge. So there's part of me that's wanted to start something new. So that's how I start thinking, since I was already playing viola, but without any formal training, I just kind of self-taught. So I think the best chance for me to get to the top conservatory in the country, maybe is just to really just commit to that new instrument and go from there. So that's how I end up, I auditioned for Central Conservatory. It's one of the best in the country. So I got in, and that's how I started.
How was your time at the Central Conservatory? Was it challenging?
At the beginning, I struggled a little bit because there was quite a huge contrast from, growing up in Wuhan, and I went to the school where I feel familiar with, and my family was there, and all that stuff. Just so until that point, seems like my middle school and high school part of my life was really comfortable. And then all of a sudden, I went to Beijing. I became nobody. That was quite an adjustment I had to make, and of course financially too. Because my parents, even though my dad seems like have this very honorable position and this respectful job, but he didn't get paid much. Plus, Wuhan is like second-tier city. Beijing is the first tier, so the living expense is much higher. So with my parents' salary, to support me to live in Beijing was quite a challenge. So I struggled with that too. It's always run out of money. And plus the other adjustment that I all of a sudden becomes no one. I have to re-establish myself. from scratch. So it took me about 2-3 years to really to find myself again, to feel comfortable.
And then you became the youngest teaching faculty at the Central Conservatory. Is that right?
Yes. That when I was in my senior years, I thought, I have to think about my career. What do I want to do? It's a job. Of course, at that time, seems like the most honorable job, for the highest honor for college graduate is to stay in the college and become a young faculty. So that's considered the highest honor. I, wanted to go after that, even though I really didn't think about if that's really what I want to do. But I just go for after that honor. So I started talking to my teacher, my professor at the time. So I told him that's what I want to do, because he was getting to the retirement age. At the time, the school doesn't have another viola teacher. After he retires, there'll be no one else. So the school wanted me to stay too. So it's like, okay, this is going to work out because they need a teacher and I want to be that one. So, so I graduated immediately from college and become a teacher without any kind of training of how to be a teacher, how to teach. I knew how to play, but really didn't know how to teach students. And I was only 22 years old, and I had to give lessons to freshmen, like 18-year-old. I really didn't know what to do, so it wasn't really a good situation. But it was really the highest honor, so it's good. But I did a lot of performance because that was actually my interest at the time. So I started to organize some chamber music concerts and start playing with other students and colleagues. I formed a little chamber group. I started playing string quartet. So doing that, I was there 5 years, teaching in the conservatory for 5 years. Didn't do much of teaching. Did a lot of performance. And and traveled around. My string quartet actually, went to London for competition. I went to Japan, Hong Kong, all that stuff. At the end, in 1995, there was a composer who came back from US. His name is Ye Xiaogang. He came back to China and he, started teaching as a composition professor. And he formed this new ensemble. It's just featuring the young composers' new work. So he formed this ensemble and I was part of that. So how it works is just young students, they will write a new piece and they will give it to us. We'll learn it, we'll read it, and we'll tell them what's working, what's not working, give them feedbacks. And they will select some good ones and then we'll play a concert. Yeah, we did a lot of that. We made some recordings. So I played a whole year of that kind of thing. Really contemporary music and reading through a lot of new work.
That's very different from what you're doing now, is that right?
It's kind of different. Yeah, it's new work. It's not some traditional classical period music. There's some experimental things, like the things we don't normally do. Like you play certain way that's not what we, usually like we know. We read the music, just play what's on the part, and you learn how to interpret it and make it musical. But this kind of new music, sometimes they just tell you to play by timing, like you play this particular passage for 35 seconds. And then when you hear something else, then you move on to the next segment. It's a lot of this kind of thing going on. And of course, there's all kinds of sound effect we have to produce, like you hit a part of the instrument, or you make some kind of vocal voice when you're playing.
Mm. So that's in Beijing, or?
Yes, it was in Beijing. That's part of the conservatory project. So led by this composer who came back from the US.
So was he the reason that you moved to the US?
No, that's not. There was some other personal reason, but mostly I kind of wanted to make a change again. For years I was there, after I realized that teaching wasn't really the thing I wanted to do.
Mm.
And also there are other like political things I wasn't really feel happy to live in that country, and there's a lot of other things going on that just feel like I want to change again.
Mm.
So, but for many years I thought about leaving, but never really made that decision and commit to it. So finally, at that point, with all the other elements together, in that year, 1996, that's the year I really just committed. So I'm gonna go. So I sent my recording and application to give it to a friend who was at Oberlin College at the time.
Mm.
So he connected me with this professor. So he took me in, gave me full scholarship. That's how I came.
Wow.
Yeah.
And did your family have to financially support you as well, or it's all supported by the scholarship?
It's mostly by scholarship.
Mm.
My family pulled together some money, before I left.
Mm.
From my brother, from my parents, from my aunts, all the family, they want to support me as much as they could. So they pulled together some little money, just give it to me. So that's it. You're going to be on your own for the next whatever years. So I started with that. I went to Oberlin. Of course, the school, I didn't have to pay tuition, and then they gave me some living expense too. But I still wanted to earn some extra, just because I have no family there. Just need some financial security. So I worked in school's cafeteria for 1 year, just earn a little extra money. The second year, I auditioned for some small orchestra in Ohio, like Akron Symphony and Canton Symphony. So I got those jobs. So I started playing concerts with them, and they paid, for a student, they paid pretty well. So I start earning money in the second year.
And how was the training at Oberlin Conservatory? Did you enjoy it?
That was like eye-opening for me.
Right.
In China, I grew up, like first I studied violin. I studied, first I started with my dad. It didn't really work out. It's, parent and child, always crying and didn't want to practice. And to the point my dad actually gave up. So when I was maybe 4th grade, he gave up. He said, okay, never mind, just do whatever you want. I was so happy. I don't have to practice anymore. It's like no more violin. So I was just, had 5-6 months of that. I was like so free. After school, the only thing I had to do is homework, and after that I can just play.
Right.
Or no more practicing. Until my dad found this violin teacher from another province. So he hired him as our new violin professor. So it's kind of a big favor for that teacher. So as a, as a thank you gift, the teacher offered to teach me.
Mm-hmm.
So my dad said, sure, give it a try. I give up, but maybe you can make it work again. So, and then I start to play violin again, of course. And then I realized this teacher is like famous for how tough he is.
Oh, wow.
Very strict, very tough, to the point is sometimes abusive.
Oh.
Verbally and even physically. Sometimes if I play really badly, he will actually use a pencil to hit my fingers if I play out of tune. And then he always like make me feel like I was horrible. But the intention is good. The intention is to push the students. But sometimes it's kind of on the border of being abusive. But it's kind of like very common in China. It's kind of old Russian system that's kind of like tough teacher. So they will make the student work harder, the hardest. But maybe part of it is my nature and part of it is that kind of abusive teaching.
Mm.
I struggled with self-confidence. So I had a lot of trouble performing in front of people. So every time I play on stage, I would get so nervous, I couldn't function. So I would play badly. So I struggled a long time. So after I went to Beijing, I went to conservatory that started to get better because the environment changed. It's more encouraging.
Mm.
But still, that part of training plus the training in Central Conservatory is similar. It's just like just being tough and being very technical oriented, like more technique, and just being very solid in technique, practice a lot, repetitive. This lack of musical exploration, or teacher would simply tell you, play with feeling, being musical, but it's all very empty. Like, I didn't understand what that means. Like how? What is considered being musical? So for many years, I just really struggled. I trying to find that meaning of that being musical. Until I went to Oberlin, I met this teacher, Jeffrey Irvine, who is one of the greatest teachers in this country. He taught many great students. So he was the one that really started to explain things to me, how you phrase this passage to make it musical. So there's a particular way of doing it, like a particular way to listen, a particular way to think and design. And after you understand all those things, then you'll come mixed with your personal feeling of music. Then we start to make music. So that was the eye-opening for me, because before that, it's all like technical training and then trying to find that feeling. But now I actually have a design, have a plan. When I learn music, I learn a piece, you have a goal, like what do you want to do? How you want to present this piece? How you want to make this music to be heard? So it's not just blind, like trying to find the feeling and tomorrow I might feel different. So that's, for 2 years I studied with him. That's really, he showed me so many new things that I never knew before. So I start to playing music now with thoughts. Like I'm thinking about music instead of just trying to feel it. So that 2 years was really great. And also that's, Oberlin is a very small college town in Ohio. Is like surrounded by just cornfields. There's nothing going on. Very tiny, and winter is cold, often snow. So there's not much going, can't really do much except practice. So I practice a lot and learn a lot. So I felt like that's the way that 2 years that made me become a different kind of musician. So that kind of paved the way for me to have success later.
So how did it change? Was that moment when you go from having, say, a tiger dad that pushes you to succeed to wanting to succeed and practice yourself? When did that happen?
Actually, I want to practice more even when I was in China, when I was probably 16. That's the moment I felt like I wanted to do something for my future. I wanted to be someone. I wanted to be better. When I was 15, I had some struggle. Like I felt like I wasn't, like music wasn't the right thing for me. I was forced into it because I didn't have choice. Like my parents made me do music. It wasn't my choice. I felt like I have some other talent. It's better than doing music. Like I probably wanted to become an engineer, some sort, or some other area like I want to explore. But somehow I was stuck in doing music, which I was not good at. So that was when I was 15. I struggled with that thought. So I was really kind of a little bit depressed because I wasn't very good at music, but I knew I had to do music because it was too late to do other things. I already missed some regular education. But when I was 16, my dad sent me to Beijing to study with this violin professor. So I became better. So from that moment, I felt like, oh, maybe I can make it work. So I started practice more, and then I started to enjoy more. So in college, I really started to feel confident. My confidence is start building. And I realized I'm actually pretty good at this. So then I started working more and practice more. That becomes more natural, not being forced. Of course, when I came to Oberlin, that's so many new things came to me. I just felt like I need to work harder because there's so many new information I want to build into my playing. So I feel like I need more time in practice room to absorb all those things and make it into part of me. So that's what's driving me. Another part of it is I want to settle down because I came to this country, I didn't want to go back. But because I came kind of late, 1996, I was 27 already. So I didn't have so much time. So I didn't want to just do it slowly, like, see how it goes. So I kind of just want to push myself. I gave myself about 3 years. Told myself if I don't succeed here, then I'm gonna have to go back. So that was my feeling at the time. I was just like on this time restriction. It's like I don't have much time. I got 3 years. I have to make it.
Got it. So how was that decision come to you between the more contemporary classical music you played with the composer in Beijing and come into more classical, more traditional route that you're playing with the Houston Symphony now? How did that moment happen?
That part of the contemporary music, it was just a 1 year. So because before that, from the very beginning of the training, it's always the traditional classical. Until that 1 year, I was just doing this project for 1 year, like almost like constantly playing the contemporary music. And after that, when it started, when I came to this country, then I went back to, again, this traditional classical music training, playing, performing. So it's not really, it's just like one period of time you are doing something a little bit different. But in general, the foundation, the basics are the same. it still requires the same kind of technique and control, musical process. It's just the style of music is very different. But now, after I got a job in Houston Symphony, I realized how much I benefit from that 1 year of that experience. Because we were constantly reading new music, like almost every week. The students are writing new music and they are eager to try it out, let us play. So we went through a lot of music, and it's a lot of really kind of sometimes difficult because they're not regular, kind of not normal things we do. So sometimes it's quite challenging. And now later, when I started working in the Houston Symphony, professional orchestra here in this country, it's actually has a similar kind of process, because every week we play a different program. Whether it's traditional or contemporary, is every week you play different music. So we're going through music real quick. Like every few days, you learn a new piece. And of course, we play repeat. Sometimes we play the same music. After a few years, we play the same Beethoven Symphony or Brahms Symphony. But the amount of music we're going through is quite a lot. And often we play something new, like never played before, and that was very limited rehearsal time. So that sight reading skill becomes very handy. So I think I benefit from that 1 year of reading a lot of music and reading a lot of unfamiliar music. So now my sight reading skill is really helping me going through my job, like make me very quick. So I can learn new music, like probably a few minutes, I can just get my way on it.
Excellent. And did you try any innovation in classical music yourself?
Can you say it again?
Have you tried any innovation or any contemporary music yourself that you compose or?
Oh, no. I don't think I have that kind of talent to write my own music. I never had that kind of training of writing music. In college, actually, we had some class to teach you the basics, harmony and the form, how the composition worked. But at that time, I didn't really pay attention because I was focused on my performing. Sometimes I went to class, I wasn't really kind of get by. I passed the test, get my degree. Now I look back, like I wish maybe I should probably pay more attention to that. Maybe I could learn a thing or two to write some music that I really can't.
And talking about the relationship between music and language, I read about this beautiful piece that you mentioned you were playing with your Fidelis quartet on your very good friend's funeral. Can you talk about this notion of music and language, music and expression? How do you use it to express, and how do you use it to break boundaries? And yeah, what do you want people to feel, or what message you want to convey with what you're playing?
Yeah, to me, music is just another form of a way of express yourself. It's like language. Language, we talk out loud. We say, describe how we feel or what we think. But music is just another way of doing that. So it's not a speaking language, but it's musical language. So in a certain music, express certain feeling, express certain, even some philosophy. Like some composer, they can use that to explored like really deep philosophical meaning of life. If you like Richard Strauss's piece, some of the tone poems that take you into that kind of place, that you start thinking about life, a really big topic. Well, some music is very simple, just express the mood or your emotion, whether it's happy or sad. Or some music can even tell stories, really descriptive. Either move that can tell a story, that kind of thing. And then, so for me, sometimes I find language, for me, sometimes it's more difficult to express myself. Couldn't find the right words or the right way to express exactly how I feel. Sometimes the way I feel is more natural if I play some kind of music to express that kind of feeling. So that was example for that funeral. My dear friend Danny passed away because he was such an inspirational person, very passionate about what he did, whether it was music, especially music, even though he later became a financial person doing business, but he never gave up on his music passion. He still practiced every day. He still wanted to perform. So that always inspired me. And so, and he's such a great, warm-hearted person. He's always very kind to others. So when he passed away, I really want to do something for him, especially a special friend. But I don't think I would be able to go up there and talk about it, in front of that many people. I probably wouldn't know what to say. So I was hoping that to play some music for him. And of course, naturally, and his family asked my string quartet to play for his funeral, because my quartet had a lot of collaboration with him before. So, and then I suggest to my quartet, and I want to play this Amazing Grace, because that's, starts with a viola solo. So start with myself alone, so I can really just using that opportunity to express my feeling towards the loss, a tribute to him. So in a way, I really practiced for a couple of days. I want to really just do it right. There's so many different ways playing that music. Everybody knows that too. But for that particular occasion, I want to say it different, like my special way. So I really worked on it, trying to find what's the most accurate way to express my feeling. And then I played that way in the funeral. It's really felt very special. So I just said, for other people too, if you listen to your music, sometimes if you can find that connection, it's just like when you go to a theater or watch a movie, or you go to a museum, you see a piece of art, that kind of, when you feel that connection, whatever can connect to you, then you can just go to explore that feeling. Let's see what this music can do to you. Whether it's just inspire you to imagine this story, or inspire you to even to bring back some memory from your childhood, or that kind of emotion, or make you think, make you feel like, oh, sometimes a lot of music is like spiritual or religious. A lot of music is kind of like church music. That's kind of like the way they express their own belief, their faith, or that kind of thing. But whatever you can find that kind of connection, see, that's how I see music. That's why music is such an important form for for our society. It's not, I don't like the word entertainment. People often say, oh, it's entertainment. But it can be very entertaining. But a lot of times, especially classical music, it's not a entertainment. It's just like a theater. It's just like a museum. It's something that can touch people's souls, make people search, make people think, not just live our daily life and go on.
Yeah, definitely for you, music is not a hobby, it's your life and your philosophy. And how do you find inspirations outside of music that you can express through music? Like, do you also get inspired by literature and from reading poetry?
I often get inspired by other, just whatever the things, even, I don't know, even just like watching a live event, just like you sit there in a coffee shop watching other people, you can get inspired. I can start imagining their lives. I can sometimes, when I was in China, I took a lot of train ride, not before the high speed, but it was very slow. So if I want to go home from Beijing to my hometown, it's going to take overnight. And often I couldn't afford the sleeping part. I'd just sit there for like 20 hours. But I spent a lot of time. That was before iPhone. There's no other things you can do. You just sit there thinking. So I start watching people on the train, and I start imagining their lives. So that kind of thing, that's kind of give me this kind of inspiration, because everybody could have very different lives. What makes them happy, that kind of stuff. Or you can watch a movie, get inspired by that. You go to a museum, you see a piece of art. You go to theater, you go to other form of performing arts. Even doing sports, all those things can be inspiring. Just in general, just being a human being, we're constantly exploring our feelings, our emotions, and the deeper meaning of it, or just something very simple. Sometimes have a nice meal, things that can really make you think, make you appreciate things. Yeah, it's all kinds of way of getting inspired.
Can you talk? Oh, yeah, go ahead, Sherry.
It's all about self-improvement. I think that's a big thing. No matter what he sets his mind to do, whether it's music or our hobby, which is tennis, it's like really just go as deep as you can. Even though you're never going to be a professional tennis player, we're not going to be Roger Federer or Serena Williams, but within our ability, you're always trying to improve on the thing that you've taken an interest in. And through whatever activity, whether it's writing or reading or whatever pursuit, if you just give it your all and keep learning and keep like curiosity about it, then that's the little thing that you take that applies to the whole life. So in the music.
And different kind of music too, not just classical music, like rock music and country music and jazz, a lot of other form of music, I take them all in.
Yeah.
And we play all of them too.
Same with me. Yeah. We love listening to jazz and ballads, things that tell stories, other people's stories. It's all about stories. We all have a story. Yeah. So, which is also why I like to write, because I love to hear other people's stories. Like you're listening to our story, you can learn so much and you can live whole lives. You can live through them, really, you know.
Yeah. So who are your favorite composers?
Mine is
both of yours. I would love to hear from each of you.
Brahms,
Mm-hmm.
Mahler. I think Mahler's music, symphonic music, to me embodies the whole range of human emotions, from the deepest despair to just an innocence of childhood, like in the opening of Mahler 4, and to death and transcendence and something beyond, something spiritual. It's just so gripping, you know, to love, all kinds of love, you know, the love for your romantic love and love between children and their parents. I mean, it's just his music really encompasses all of that for me. When I hear it, it's really wrenching, you know, and warming too. Who else? Well, I mean, as a pianist, I can play Chopin endlessly. I mean, it's just beautiful music.
I have a lot of favorites from Bach.
Yeah, me too.
Mozart,
Bach, Mozart,
you know,
all of those
great composers like Mahler, Wagner, Richard Strauss,
yeah.
Shostakovich.
Mm-hmm.
But when this couple of years, I start to really appreciate more and more Beethoven. I think Beethoven was at some point is like overplayed. It's a lot of people, we all know Beethoven. Everybody knows Beethoven 5. It becomes kind of like Beethoven becomes like a popular kind of composer. Becomes popular music. Everybody can say da 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 dum. And then it's kind of like being overlooked because, everybody wants to hear Beethoven. Yeah, I'm sick of it. But the more I play music and the older I become, and I start to really look at Beethoven's music, like he's such a genius. Like really, I start to appreciate his music more and more these days.
Yeah. So during this COVID-19 thing, you know, we're both stuck at home and our kids are home. So I've been finding myself practicing a lot, actually, just sitting at the piano and playing just my old favorite pieces, the things that calm me down and makes me, and some of them are just the simplest things, like Schumann's Scenes from Childhood, or what else? Tchaikovsky Waltz, and you know, and he and my daughter were playing this set of Shostakovich pieces, 5 pieces for 2 violins. He picked up his violin again to play with her, and the 3 of us recorded some of the pieces in that set, and that felt so good to just music at a time like this as a family. That's the best thing about being a musician, I guess, is to have that source where we can draw our strength from, you know, anytime.
So you have a bit of family quartet at your house.
Right, we could. My son doesn't practice very much, but we might make him participate one of these days. Yeah, so we do a lot of family music. We're all, I guess, some kind of musician, and we all play tennis together. So we do share a lot of things.
So what instruments do your children play?
Violin.
Violin.
They both play violin, and they kind of dabble on the piano, but I never taught them. Like I told you, I'm not a good one-on-one piano teacher, and it's probably especially not for my children. So, but they do know how to read music, so they can always play around on the piano.
Do you expect them to grow up to be musicians like yourselves?
No. Yeah, I don't think I think my daughter is probably more inclined to play music. Maybe she will still find, you know, at least keeping it in her life. But they have other interests, and we just want them to go wherever their interests take them.
Mm. I forgot to ask, how old are they?
Okay, my daughter just turned 13 and my son just turned 16 recently.
Do they speak?
Okay. They don't speak any Chinese. Yeah. My daughter probably maybe has 2 words in Chinese, like thank you or 谢谢. Or 听不懂.
So how do you help them understand a bit more about their Chinese roots or Chinese culture? Is that something that or not?
That is not something that has been very, a big part. I mean, it's not.
Yeah, I didn't talk much about my childhood. I grew up with a lot of negative experience in China, especially early years. So I have bad memories. Not particular any incidents, it's just in general.
Just about the culture.
The culture there. Of the bad side of the culture.
Yeah.
People, even a lot of adults, would make fun of me, calling me names, but not just to me. It's like I observed that's kind of like in general.
A general cruelty,
like
and lack of valuing of individual decisions, individual will. It's just like everybody has to conform to a certain kind of way of thinking in order to survive.
They like the particular kind of kids, like kids that know how to sweet talk to adults and have look good looking, cute. But other kind of kids, like I was kind of quiet and not very cute, whatever, according to their standard. So they were just like,
he's cute.
So I always get this kind of negative comments. Ugly, stupid, dumb.
Yeah.
Throughout my childhood. And then I watched other similar kids get the same kind of treatment. So it's kind of like a very society kind of general thing. Including within my own family, it's the same. It's like everybody's doing the same thing. If you're not this, then you're just.
Yeah. We both always felt like the American culture and just the way people interact with each other is more genuine, and we like life here where you can just live your own life the way you wanted to without societal pressures like that.
Positive, like a lot of encouragement here.
Yeah.
Some people in China say, oh, that's maybe it's too much. Like sometimes it's not real. But in a way, because I had the opposite experience, because part of the reason I struggled with performing in early days, part of it was my abusive teacher, but the other part is from other people. If I play in front of people I messed up, everybody's gonna let me know, and then everybody's gonna make fun of me. I had a neighbor who has, in the early 80s, nobody had a recorder. So he had this fancy boombox and kind of recording function. So he would record my practice secretly, like outside my door. And then he would go to the courtyard to play loudly to the whole neighborhood and laugh. Everybody was laughing at it. Because I was a little kid, practicing violin is sometimes really kind of like, they call it dying chicken. It's like you scratchy and out of tune. And then all of a sudden I hear people laughing outside. I didn't know what's going on. And I realized he recorded my practice and played, and everybody was laughing at me. Yeah. So that's kind of gave me that kind of experience.
There's a lot of shaming in that society. I mean, even I was on the other side of that, because I was that little girl that showed off to the neighbors and danced and sang in front of them. I was well loved by everybody and complimented all the time. The opposite of his personality. So, but still, like I remember things like getting our grades, where the teacher will read out everybody's grade, and shame the ones that weren't at the top. It's just like comparing children at a very young age, very traumatic things that would never happen here. I mean, I don't know if they still do that, but just the way the education system there, the general culture, we both find a lot of that really negative.
Later, my nature is I would say I have some principle and integrity, but I just didn't really fit in that society.
Right. You
because
have
often,
to.
If I follow my moral code, that means I don't get ahead.
Right.
When I don't get ahead by breaking the code, people are calling me stupid.
Right.
So like you don't cut the line, or you don't
brown nose the leader, bribe and a lot of corruption, a lot of really corrupt practices.
Yeah, I had experience with that even later when I was working at the conservatory. I didn't bribe this person who was in charge of getting me a passport so I can go play in Macau with the Central Opera. But I didn't bribe him. I didn't know I had to do that. At the end, by the time the concert was coming, I didn't get my passport. So the second time I learned my lesson, I go ask him to give me a passport. This time I give him a card,
cigarettes. That's the gift.
Took him out for dinner, drinking, all that stuff. I got my passport in 5 days.
Yeah, there's a lot of things like that go on in China. Still goes on in China. A lot of red envelopes.
Yeah, so that kind of thing is really against my nature. I had a problem with that.
Yeah.
So part of that, just kind of contribute to where I kind of don't really want my kids to have the connection with that culture.
Yeah. I mean, we do things like make Chinese dumplings on Chinese New Year's.
Tradition.
Some of the, good traditions, just, with food and holidays and things like that. But definitely not the culture of living day-to-day life there. We want them to have integrity and to, just be free to live the way they want to.
Right. So do you still visit China at all? Or do you have
all of my aunts and uncles are there in my big extended family that grew up in my grandmother's house. A lot of them still live some of my aunts still live in that house. And all my cousins, most of my extended family is still in Beijing. But it's been a while. It's been 4 years or 5 years since we've been back. He has a brother in Wuhan right now who's, was housebound for 2 months during this crisis.
We used to go back more often when my mom was still around. After she passed away, I kind of just didn't go back much.
Yeah. We did play a recital in the Wuhan Conservatory together for her, to honor her. I mean, because she had actually never heard him play in a concert for that. And that was after we found out she was dying of cancer. And we decided to go back and play this really special concert for her. That was a pretty moving experience. All of his old teachers came. And, some of his classmates from before. That was in
2010, the winter
2011 or 2010.
The winter of 2010.
Okay. So, we haven't gone back much. And he was going to go in April of this year, like this month. But of course, now
I still have my ticket.
He still has his ticket, but it's a little hard to travel right now.
Yeah. So have you been seeing many of your friends playing on Facebook and trying to encourage everyone?
Yeah, Wei is not on social media at all. He's kind of anti-social media because I can see that. I can see how it's kind of our new ways, the new world now where everybody has to do it. He doesn't want to be involved in that. I am on Facebook and Instagram and all of that. And I do enjoy watching friends' videos, but it can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just want to turn it off and just live my own life. Because, there's good content out there. but there's also really content that just takes up your time.
Yeah.
And, you know, and it's hard to focus. It's hard to focus on the things that are really important to you, you know, your own life, essential things, if you're just scrolling through everybody's feed, you know.
I had Facebook before.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes I find myself wasting a lot of time just clicking to see what people are doing. And sometimes I do feel kind of feeling like, oh, seems like everybody have better life. Than me.
Right. You do end up kind of comparing.
Like they eat better, or they have better vacation.
Or their children are like going to Harvard and Princeton.
They have perfect children. So like, when I compare everything to me, it's like, man,
I'm a failure.
But then, of course, I realized people only posted
the good stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I do the same. I like to share the wonderful parts of our life, you know, and when people tell me that's inspiring, that's the positive side of it, you know. You know, when people respond to your post and they say that their day was made better by it, or thank you for sharing this beautiful music, it really helped me through a tough day. That's always moving, and that's a good thing. You know.
The bad thing is the political thing.
I never post
political argument that can be really poison.
Right.
Really poison a lot of relationships. But you can't face that person.
Right.
The next time you see this person, he's like you're on the opposite of political.
Right.
Agenda.
Yeah, we don't like the polarization that's happening. You know. We always respect everybody's, you know, way of life.
Yeah.
Voice. You know.
So out of this pandemic, do you see that technology will do much changes to our lifestyle, say the way we communicate and connect with each other?
Yeah, as in all things, there's good things and bad things about it. I mean, everybody's learning this curve now, even the people who are not. I don't consider myself tech savvy at all. This is like my second Zoom meeting ever. So everybody's using Zoom now to conference and also to make cool music videos.
Yeah.
You can bring people from all over the country together and make this really inspiring orchestral piece together. You know, I think the symphony is going to do something like that, and other orchestras have already participated in that. You know, so I mean, those are good things to learn how to use all these things for the good. But I also don't want it to be where people are just on their screen all the time, and you know, they don't communicate in real life anymore. But I think people still do, and they're going to crave going back to a live concert again. They're going to crave. I hope so. I mean, because now the symphony is not working, and you know, we hope the audience will come back, because there's nothing like a live performance where you're sitting next to real life human beings and sharing this communal experience of how the transformative power of music. You know, nothing can replace that.
Yeah.
People go back to the concert halls when everything is back to a sort of normal again. It would be sad if everything's just online and no one goes to live things anymore.
I think that's going to happen because online, you know, the feel is different, the quality is different, you know, the sound is different. A lot of things you can't really do.
Right. I would much rather go to a live play than watch it on TV. You know, that's why. No, it's just not the same. I mean, I know if you have ever been to live events, and then you know that it's not the same at all.
Yeah. So, how do you see some of the pop culture's portrait of the classical music or circle or the symphony's life, like the Mozart in the Jungle? Are you guys a fan of that?
He refuses to watch that show. I enjoy it immensely. I think any show with classical music in it, whether it's a genuine portrayal or not, it's good to have it in the public's mind. However they misinterpret it, you know. He has a different opinion. We often have very different opinions.
Classical music is something. If you use the music in the movie or in the show, that's different. Then you portray the actual symphony live, right? You don't really know how.
But okay, I have to say that this person that wrote the book, I read the book too. It's kind of a soap opera. I mean, it's kind of scandalous, you know, like intentionally scandalous and soap opera-ish, you know, but it is based on her true life, but from her perspective.
In her book, there's no setting of symphony rehearsals, concerts.
And how they audition, all of that is wrong. There's a lot of things wrong.
When you see that's like completely wrong, it just make me really kind of like, can you just do a little study or interview some musicians? Like, how's the audition work? How do you do it? Right. Instead of like, oh, there's an audition now, I'm gonna go, and you just call a taxi and they showed up, and somehow the conductor's still there, and you just play in front of him, and you got a job. It's like,
right.
No,
it doesn't work that way in real life. But I mean, I think it's fine. Think of it as entertainment.
But you give the wrong information to the public.
I know. Yeah.
Because entertainment and documentaries are different.
Yeah. But documentaries are different. I mean, they used to make these great music videos like in Itzhak Perlman and Zuckerman and Jacqueline Dupre, those old videos of them actually preparing for a concert and putting on a performance and documenting their touring. Those are great videos. I mean, I hope I know classical musicians all know about these things. I wish those were more in the popular culture. You know, I mean, you can find them on YouTube. It's just people don't.
But Fantasia
really know. Fantasia was great. You know, that the way they created those cartoons based on that music. You know, and that's still a classic. A lot of the children still watch that. You know, Bugs Bunny is great. You know, that introduced a whole generation to classical music and opera. There's a lot of great things you can do. But now a lot of shows use classical music. It's almost like all the villains. I don't know if you've noticed, all the villains love classical music.
Yeah.
Like, what was that?
Wilson
Fisk. You know,
every morning he will listen to his Bach cello suite when he was cooking his breakfast, and then he was like, later he's gonna go murder people.
Oh.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know what people in popular culture classical music is these days. I mean, I think it's an art form that will always be here. They always say, like, how do we attract young audiences? How do we make the next generation? I think when you get to a certain age, if you had the education, if you've been exposed to it, you come to it. You come to it, and there's always going to be people the music has touched them deeply at one point in their life, that sticks with them, and they will introduce it to their children. I think it's always going to be here. You know, it's like a museum of beautiful art.
It just needs time to develop that.
Yeah,
it's slow.
It
slow.
takes a lot of effort.
Sometimes when people in their 20s, they're not there. They're still living their other part of life. But when they really gets older, more mature, you know, especially people with a certain level of education and that need, they will start to feel that they need something to go deeper. So then they will turn into art and classical music.
Right.
So that's why we see museum and symphony halls and a lot more older people.
Right.
So,
well, it's also that they have time to spend on that.
Time, they're financially secure.
Yeah. But I think it's okay to think of symphony orchestras and classical music institutions as curators of fine, like a museum of fine art. I mean, these are old masterpieces. Of course, we always want to innovate and play the music of today, but there's also always a place for this great literature, great masterpieces of classical music. So I mean,
just like, you know, it's always going to be people who go to Shakespeare.
Right.
You know, how many 100 years pass.
I hope so. I hope we don't get into this whole making everything political, and I don't know if I want to go there, but you know, like now we focus so much on diversity, which is all good. You can have all of that and still have your the core literature, you know, the core Beethoven and then Brahms and then Mahler. You can still have that. I don't think you can. I think that's the foundation. I mean, classical musicians still have to go to conservatory and learn the basic repertoire. You know, no matter how good they get at playing contemporary music. You know, and you can do. People are so amazing now. I mean, technology is so amazing now. It's just a wider scope. Everybody should just feel lucky that they can have all of it instead of just focusing on new music or old music. You know, it's just the boundaries are more undefined now. I think you can cross boundaries more easily and create new things. So
yeah,
I still love to perform, actually. I mean, that's what really gets me going. And again, it's not a money-making proposition at all, but project by project. I actually run a little chamber music series at Houston Community College, just kind of informally. But for the past 6 or 7 years, I've been doing like 3 or 4 concerts there a year, and just with friends and symphony musicians, and you know, one concert at a time, putting on something for the community, and that helps me to keep my foot in the performing world and still do all the other things that I like to do.
Right. So talking about interdisciplinary, so in today's time, I feel like everyone's kind of a bit ADHD and pick up that all sorts of interests and skills. So in your view, like, what do you think is more important to be exposed to a broad range of musical instruments like piano, viola, cello, or voice, or do you think people should focus on something and just do it to the best?
I think that depends on the person. Like, just between the two of us, we're the polar opposite on that. So I have a wide variety of interests and I want to pursue them all. And he has 1 or 2 interests and he wants to pursue them to as far and deep as he can. So I would encourage, whatever your personality is, whatever your inclination is, just do that. You know, you don't have to become a master at something to enjoy it, to me. I would love to just go to Rice and take a variety of classes. In our history class, take a French class. I mean, it's just, you know, take a film history class. I'm the kind of person who wants to know a little bit about everything and try to just make connections in my head between them all.
Yeah.
I'll just be able to appreciate. Somebody has to consume all the art we produce. I think of myself sometimes as a consumer of the arts, you know, the one that goes to buy the tickets and watch our films and you know, buy the tickets to go see an opera or a play. Somebody has to have that broad interest in order to appreciate all these things. So I'm that person, you know. I don't have to be an expert at it, but the more I know about it, then the more I appreciate it, and that's part of my life. But you know, it's somebody else might just not want to be so scattered like me, you know, and they're happy with just 1 or 2 things.
Yeah, there's always these 2 kinds. You know,
yeah.
Every other things too. Like some kids go to college, they want to learn everything.
Yeah.
They take the class here, they take the class there.
Yeah.
But some kids from probably like 8th grade, they know exactly what they want to do.
Yeah.
They just go one field all the way.
Yeah. So. And they end up studying like this particular worm and and end up working in a lab and discovering some amazing cure from studying this worm. You know, it's like it takes all kinds to make our world go around.
We need all kinds of people.
Yeah. So we've accepted that we're very different and we can still live together.
So there's a contemporary trend about this fusion of Oriental music, like the Wu-Wei's concert at Asia Society in October. That was the Shen instrument played with the piano. There was like a little duet and it was yeah, very contemporary as well as very oriental. Do you have any like opinion on how the Western and the Eastern music can combine and create a new genre?
Yeah, I don't even think it's necessarily a new genre. It's there's a lot of crossovers like that between many types of music. So I think, yeah, Eastern music and Western music, it's two very different systems.
Yeah.
Chinese music, I don't know in particular. I don't think that's a hard transition to make. And there's a couple of groups in town that are really interested in folk traditions from all kinds of countries, like Apollo chamber players, which I've covered in several of my articles.
Mm-hmm.
Each concert is dealing with a different culture. You know, they've done everything from Vietnamese. They collaborated with Vietnamese specialist on her instrument and commissioned new pieces with that and the string quartet. So I've seen this kind of stuff done, and they've done a thing of Indian music, which is actually more difficult to transition with Western music. But this composer is a specialist at doing that, and I think he called it mel harmony. But I mean, there's yeah, they've done you know, Scandinavian music. They've done things with Japanese music. It's if that's, you can totally focus on just that aspect of how to bring diverse musics together and make that your theme for your group. And they've done a great job with that. So I think all these artists that are trying to do that, that's great, you know. And if it's done well, like way, and it's it can be eye-opening, and bring in new audiences and bring maybe more Asian audiences into classical music and vice versa, you know. But I don't find that unusual at all, because it's happening all over the place. And it's been happening for a while. So I see that as just part of the whole boundaryless, you know, trying to not have boundaries between different musical genres. So we don't have to like put a definition. Music is just music. Music that touches you, music that expresses something, it's going to speak to somebody. If it speaks to somebody, that's the function, that's the purpose of that music. What do you
I think great.
Yeah.
You know, it's always good to have something new, something different.
Yeah.
You know, if people can find a way to create new content,
yeah,
we can reach out to people. It's always a good thing.
Right. But I do worry about quality. So I mean, in all of that, it's very important that, and who is the arbiter of quality? Who judges whether something, you know, I think we cannot necessarily leave that to just general public opinion, because then some of these YouTube stars that are supposedly virtuoso violinists or whatever, you know, it's like they would not pass mustard with any real classical musician. But I mean, there's things like that out there too. So you just have to, I mean, I think as a trained classical musician, you just have to keep advocating for the best quality. And that's why I think music writing is important. People who review music, that's still important. Being a, you know, the whole profession of being a music critic, I think everybody thinks they're an expert now. Everybody has an opinion, and everybody can express it on social media. But it's still important to have professionals that are professional listeners, that they've listened to a huge bulk of the repertoire and all the people that play it, that can tell you the differences between people's interpretations, that have a vast amount of knowledge. It's still important to listen to the experts. And I think we live in an age where everybody thinks they're an expert and no one's really listening to, I don't know, no one's really, what am I trying to say? I think it's just their own opinion is the only thing that's important, instead of just having the attitude of being more humble and learning and respecting people who may know a little bit more than you do, you know. So that's how we're going to keep the quality, is if we keep demanding that quality, keep the expectations high. So not everything is going to get a pass. You know, if I'm, that's the hard thing about being a music critic and reviewing things. It's like most people just want to advertise themselves now, to promote their music, but not all of it is equally good. And, you know, there's still a difference between good and bad. Just because it's different doesn't mean it's good, you know, or just because it's innovative doesn't mean
it's all come with the social media.
I know. I think social media is it kind of
it's
proliferates
a good,
that.
good way. It's easier to get it out. Like,
Yeah.
if you have something good, and the whole world can see.
Yeah.
The bad thing is too many not so good.
Too many mediocre things out there.
In the old days, only the best can be on the radio, on TV.
Yeah.
Or you have to go to the symphony hall to hear it.
Right.
Otherwise, you will never hear them.
Right.
These days, anybody can have their own platform.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I just think it's important to have guides along the way to show you what is good. I mean, because if you are not educated in classical music, then when you first come into it, you don't know what you're listening to. You know? Maybe a student orchestra sounds the same to you as a professional symphony orchestra. I don't know. I mean, I hope instinctively you know the difference, but maybe not. I don't know. I often wonder that, but I mean, I don't know. There's a place for everybody. Everybody should be able to make music. You know, I go to my children's concerts all the time, and I don't sit there and judge their intonation and their ensemble, because they're students. You know, at that level, they're expressing themselves, and they're making the best music they can make, and just that it's genuine. You know. I can enjoy that as much as I enjoy a professional orchestra. But, you know, it's a different.
It's different reason.
Different, yeah.
You enjoy that because you enjoy watching the kids play music.
Right.
You're not going there for the quality of the music.
Right.
You're going there for just them doing it.
It's the inspiration. They're inspired to do something they love, and the teachers have the effort that they put into, and they're learning, you know. But students too, they aspire to get better and better. You know, if you just think you're always okay at this level, you're never going to want to improve. You know, that's why you want to get into a better orchestra, or, you know, I mean, if you want to become a professional musician, then you're always going to want to improve. There's always somebody that can inspire you to be better. It's just, you can never stop. Maybe that's true in all professions, but I think musicians are just, it's a lifelong process.
Yeah, I heard most of the artists are perfectionists. Maybe that's the way.
But people do say that, you know, perfect is the enemy of good, right? So I don't actually consider myself a perfectionist. Some people are. Some people can't even bear to listen to themselves, the recordings of themselves, because they're going to pick at every little fault that they have. He that's kind of like him. But I enjoy listening to myself. I'll record something I know is not perfect, and I still want to share it because the feeling is in it. You know, it's a genuine performance with a few missed notes or misplaced whatever, but timing or whatever. But
I use it as a practice tool, because when you listen to yourself, you pick on yourself, and then you improve, because you're going to say, oh, I don't like this, I can't stand that. And then you go practice and you can correct those things. But it's not for you.
Really? Yeah. To me, the mark of a good performance is not the you know, playing every note correctly and everything goes according to plan. It's how you made that audience feel in the moment. And that's why live performances are the best things.
Yeah.
Because you can have all the mistakes, but you've communicated something came across. And that's the most rewarding part, is when the audience responds and they could feel you. They could feel what you were trying to convey. And I remember, I guess one of the most memorable comments that I got was after a performance of the Shostakovich Piano Trio when I was at OU at University of Oklahoma with my little piano trio. And that last movement, it's about the Nazis making the Jews before they were shot to death. Well, anyways, it's them dancing on their graves. It's something just very, just total despair. That piece it's cold and horror, cold and horror, and all of those darkest things. And we told them the story, and then we started playing it, and I could feel chill like on my skin as I was performing it, but the room was like dead still. It was so quiet, you could hear a pin drop. And that whole movement, the last movement of that piece, we played it, and then afterwards there was just like complete silence. You could hear a pin drop, and then just this thundering applause, and then afterwards this old couple came up to us and she was crying. It's just like that she couldn't even describe it. She didn't even have the words for what she was feeling. That was so moving and so powerful. And to have that communicated that's just the musician's reward.
Wow. So what other memorable experience or that kind of magical power of the stage that you wish be willing to share with us?
Right.
Memorable performance.
Well, the one that we did for his mom in Wuhan, that was really special, I felt. Yeah. I just recently did a house concert at Jason Erb's Memorial Classical Series, and I've started to do these little talks before my performances. I enjoy, learning about stories about the music I'm playing. And we did a concert where it was all female composers, and I kind of tied them together about the obstacles that female composers faced in their times and their success despite the obstacles they faced. So just that concert, between the talking and actually playing these lovely pieces by people like Lily Boulanger and who else? Who was on there? Clara Schumann and a few others. There were 5 female composers on there. Amy Beach. Just telling their stories, it just made me feel, like the audience learned something new, and it opened their eyes to something they haven't thought about. Because we're focusing more and more on female composers now, but still few people who are not in classical music, few people who are outside of our classical music realm know anything about these works or these women. So just to be able to share that and bring some of that to light was really rewarding for me and for the audience too. So yeah, every performance is special. There's always a high afterwards that you feel like you communicated and you did something, lasting, that it makes a lasting impact on someone else's life. So, you have any stories?
I have so many performances I can't.
I know his is different because that's his profession. So I don't think of myself as necessarily even a professional musician. I guess I'm semi-professional. Because I do fewer concerts, maybe I do 4 concerts a year and chamber music, but he plays every week. So it's different for him, I think.
I'm sure there are a lot of really memorable performances right after. I think, oh, this is so special.
Yeah.
But,
talk about Reichenbach and how when he first came here, the conductor of the Houston Symphony was Christoph Eschenbach.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most, to me, amazing musicians that's still working
the
today.
memorable moment is when I have my 10-year trial. Means when my second year, I have to sit in the front for the first stand. That's my trial. Past that, I could get my tenure. So during the rehearsal, this is a Bruckner 7th Symphony. I remember him, the moment this viola has this tremolo crescendo to like really, really like the loudest moment, it's the peak of this page. And he was just like staring at me with his baton, just like doing this to me. And then his face started turning red. His eyeballs is like popping out. And I was giving like absolutely 100% everything I had, just because he was just giving this like for a long, long time.
So intense.
Yeah, so intense. And I just gave it all until he smiled and he looked away. It was like, oh my God. That moment I thought, oh, maybe I passed.
Right. There's some conductors that draw that out of you, that it just one look, you know, then it makes you give 150%.
Yeah, and then you get the feedback, because if you did well and they give you that smile, it's like approval.
Right.
It's like, you did great. Yeah. So there's a lot of, you know, this kind of a good conductor has this kind of leadership quality. They get the best out of you, and then also they give you the feedback. Right.
And that's, you know, 100 musicians out there, and he communicates with each individual musician. At some moment in the piece, they might make that connection, and that makes all the difference.
Yeah. Wow. That's really powerful. You shared that. So in your professional experience, have you experienced any, I think Sherry mentioned this briefly, any Asian stereotyping?
Not really.
Not in our profession, because in our field, there's a lot.
There's a lot of Asians. There's a lot of very excellent Asian musicians.
Asian, traditionally, you could say that's stereotype. Most Asians are very disciplined, you know, come from that kind of very disciplined family that, you know, practice a lot, high achievers.
Yeah, especially technique-wise, you've got a mastery of technique.
Most Asian musicians in the orchestra or in the solo or chamber music, they're all very solid, very excellent, they have high quality, and they are still disciplined, still practicing.
Yeah.
And then they're also the personality or character-wise, you know, Asian culture is more like you have more self-control, a lot of respect to others.
Yeah.
So it's usually been received, like, regard highly.
Right. Yeah, I don't feel there has been any discrimination, for sure not. I mean, if there's any stereotype, is that that technical brilliance is foremost and more than our musicianship. I think that's often people say, oh, he's just technically brilliant, but lacks feeling or passion because of that very kind of more strict upbringing. You know, but I haven't really seen that, because there are so many beautiful Asian players now that are as expressive and musically, you know, musically mature and masterful, and not just technical. I would say like maybe 10, 20 years ago it was more that way, but now more and more Asian musicians are more the whole package.
Yeah. I think maybe in our field is a little bit unique that way.
Yeah.
Because this Asian contributed a lot to this, and I never experienced any that kind
and I don't ever feel people in the orchestra say, oh, we hired another Chinese violinist, or I don't feel that way. I don't feel at all.
Sometimes we ourselves,
here's our Asian group, or
we have I'm a hot competition every year.
Yeah.
Usually
at
we have
Rice.
4 finalists. Usually
It's
like
like-
a lot of years, like all 4 of them are Asian.
Yeah.
So sometimes we just joke, "Whoa, there's one non-Asian in the final." It's
Yeah.
like surprise.
Right. Yeah. So we're used to being, this is a field where we're really well represented and in a really positive way. Yeah. And I don't think people resent it. And I haven't felt anybody say, oh, another Asian's going to win this or whatever.
And now we have a lot of Asian that take the leadership position.
Yeah.
the
That's
principals.
that's one thing though that you just mentioned, leadership positions. I want you to note especially that for years Wei didn't want to participate in the leadership part of the orchestra as not as a musician, but as the orchestra has committees that represent them. 2 of the most important committees are the orchestra committee and the negotiating committee, and those are important administrative positions.
Dealing
within
with
the orchestra.
contractual issues
Right.
and dealing with the management,
Yeah.
dealing with our union,
Right.
locally.
Yeah. Usually Asian Americans in the orchestra are not likely to participate in that kind of things because they don't think they're suited to that. They don't want to speak in front of a group. They just come to work, play their instrument and go home.
With language barrier.
Or there's a language barrier, or they don't understand the legal language, or they don't want to deal with their colleagues, conflicts between their colleagues and between colleagues and management. They
Stand
just
up,
want
when
to.
you see something not right, you stand
up and you express your views. A lot of Asians, I think, are not comfortable doing that. They're conflict averse. They just want to come to work, contribute their playing, and go home to their families, right? But I've really, throughout the years, encouraged Wei because I think he's so good at negotiating and so good at seeing everybody's point of view and coming up with like really innovative and fair and just solutions, So now he's finally, I think, reached that point in his life where he is comfortable taking on those roles. So he served on the last negotiating committee and he's now on the orchestra committee. And he does a lot of work with that. I mean, a lot of work. Like orchestra committee is the one where any musician has any problems, they have to come to through the orchestra committee to solve those problems. So why don't you talk about it?
Yeah, like for example, this COVID-19 period, we cancel our concerts. Of course, the management is dealing with this financial impact. How they're going to survive this? But musicians worry about they might stop paying us. Good, using the language in the contract, but they didn't. But there's certain things we have to make. We have to make a pay cut. We have to make some sacrifices.
Yeah.
So how we're going to come to an agreement? What's the best solution for both sides? So there's a lot of meeting going on, negotiating. Of course, now the management and musicians are in a good relationship, so it's not difficult. But there's still a lot of legal, language, and contractual issue we'll have to deal with. Also between management and musician, between musician and the union, between union and management.
Right.
So we're in between to manage all that kind of.
Yeah, I mean, specific logistically things like having to take a vote. You have to set up a survey to ask musicians' opinions, and then you have to, collect the votes. Just, mundane things that are, he has to work out.
Yeah, a lot of times it's interpretation of the language.
Yeah.
2 people can have 2 different way of interpreting the same language in the document.
Yeah.
So you have to figure out which one is the proper.
I joke with him because I think he can be a lawyer now. I mean, he's got that lawyer's brain, And he's the one that always catches on to the smallest details. And even though he's not, English is not his first native language, he understands that legalese better than I can, or better than, a native-born speaker possibly could.
Yeah, that's kind of my specialty. Not to the language itself, it's the meaning of the legal definition. Why they say this? What's the purpose of have this limitation? So sometimes I can see immediately there's some problem or wrong interpretation. I even correct our own lawyer a few times.
Wow.
New skill. I think it's always good to, your potential is never, I think he has limitless potential in many things. So
You have a second career for the musicians as a lawyer.
Dude, he could be a tennis coach. He could fix any computers. So he could be a computer engineer.
So has music played a big role in your marriage, in your relationship?
Well, that's how we met. Yeah, and we've done concerts together. I mean, I always want to play with him more simply because I do so few concerts and he does, but he does get burned out. I totally understand as a career. If you do music as a career, it does tend to become a job after a while. That's unavoidable. I mean, that doesn't mean you lose the love for the music. It just means you get tired, And a lot of musicians still have jobs in the summer where they go play in a summer orchestra or some kind of festival or teach a lot. For him, that summer month in August, that's total rest. He doesn't want to do anything with music.
Want to get burned.
He doesn't want to get burned out. He needs that time to recover and fall in love again, For me, I always want to play more because I never quite get enough because I do other things as the major part of my career. So sometimes I push him a little bit too hard on trying to get a concert together or whatever. But I mean, in this COVID-19 time, actually, I found that we both kind of want to play, and we've sat down, just side read something together and, played with our children, just, it's really nice to have this downtime, actually. It's kind of a very special time. I know the whole world is turning upside down, but as far as just slowing down our own lives and just to be able to enjoy what we have, it's been a good time. So yeah, music is definitely something that binds us together. We often listen to pieces of music, like just find a recording of some orchestra playing something on YouTube and
play.
We talk about it or we have a record player, we put on some old recording and it's, we speak the same language, generally have very similar opinions about at least the quality and the interpretation of the music. We kind of we know we share the same opinion about what is to us, what moves us, what's impressive and what's, That's definitely a big topic of conversation around here, just listening together.
And going back a few years, how did you guys meet? I mean.
Well, it was, let's see. How did we meet? I'll let you say.
Well,
I don't know what's appropriate to share.
After I finished at Oberlin, I need to find another school to stay, keep my student status, and also keep training and get a job.
Mm-hmm.
I found this, University of Maryland would be a good place to go. The teacher was the right kind.
The teacher is Dan Foster, who is the principal violist of the National Symphony. He's known to be a really great teacher for teaching orchestra excerpts, which is what you need to prepare for an orchestra audition.
He's very smart, and he's actually the same age as me. He had a lot of experience taking auditions, winning the job. So I think that was a good place to go. And then they also offered me an assistantship so I could get some money. Then I went there, of course, and I had a friend who is at Oberlin who's from Maryland area. She said, I'll introduce you to some friends. So you can go there, you already know people. So she took me to this place, meet a group of people, and she was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we met. And she immediately asked me if I know her grandfather, if I've ever heard of her grandfather.
He passed the test.
And I said, of course, I know his history, and he was the governor of the Hunan and all that stuff. And she was like,
I was kind of shocked because for somebody of, you know, for somebody his age to know the modern Chinese history as well as he did must mean he's intellectual, that he's read a lot of books, he's interested in history, and so I was impressed. And I don't know. I had a boyfriend then, but you know.
But my first impression is like, wow, she's Chen Qian's granddaughter. She must be that
stuck up.
She's that kind of like privileged,
yeah,
celebrity and whatever.
Yeah, but I was none of that. I'm very genuine and easy to. I think that's my strength, is to make people feel comfortable very easily. So, yeah, and just the fact that we're opposites, you know, it somehow complement each one of us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, something like that. And then you know, of course, I'm a pianist, so everybody needs a pianist, you know, to play for them. He can't, there's, you know, so through making music with him, it's another layer of falling in love. This happens to musicians a lot in particular, is this, sometimes you fall in love with the music.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know if you're really in love with that person, or if you're in love because that person plays the music so well.
Yeah.
Or that person is expressing themselves through the music, you think you know that person.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that's an illusion, and the person doesn't turn out to be the person behind the music. And that's happened to me a few times, but with him, I felt that what he was expressing through the music was really truly himself.
Mm-hmm.
And so you could fall in love with the music that you're making together and the person, and it synced really well. And at that time, he was having a hard time because, you know, he had just found out. I often say that his father brought us together, even though he passed away. I didn't even get to meet him because he found out that his father had leukemia, and it was at that moment that I just felt this flood of empathy and sympathy for him, and I knew he needed somebody, and I wanted to be that person that could comfort him at that point. So that's another layer that brought us together. Because his father was very important to him. His father, he never did make it back to China to see his father before he passed away, and that's probably one of Wei's deepest regrets. You know?
So that was 1 year after he came to the U.S.?
Yeah. So he was still on a student visa in Maryland, and his family told him not to go back, you know.
Because we never told him, so, you know,
Yeah.
it's a tradition in Asia, I guess, it's very common.
Yeah.
When a loved one is diagnosed with cancer,
you hide the truth.
You know. So they will not be
sad,
impacted so emotionally too.
Yeah, I don't agree with that view, but you know, they didn't tell him
that was
he was
that
dying.
was the decision. So they did. My mom and my brother didn't want to go back. They will blow it.
Right, because then he'll know that he's dying, or you know. So his last memory of his dad is his dad sending him to the airport to come to this country.
Wow.
That was when he said goodbye at the airport. That was that. And he still has like very, very specific memory about all that is on those last few days together.
Mm-hmm. There was a movie that came out about that Asian. Don't tell her.
Oh yeah, the farewell. Yeah, we saw that. The farewell. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can understand that, but I just, you know, I mean, recently my father actually had a health scare too, and some of my family didn't want to tell him because we thought he had a brain tumor that was originated from possibly lung cancer. It actually was a false diagnosis, so thank goodness everything worked out. But I still ended up telling him the truth at the time, you know. So I just believe that people deserve the right to know the truth and to deal with it in their own way, so they can say their goodbyes and say what.
Yeah, from my own experience, that's, my dad didn't know anything, so there was no arrangement of what he wanted to do, any wishes, any people he wanted to see, all that stuff. Even after he passed away, there are a lot of things we didn't know about his stuff.
Right.
Like his documents and stuff. Like, does he have any
Yeah.
things? Where are they?
I think Chinese people, I don't know if this is all Asians, but definitely Chinese people, death is kind of a taboo subject. I still can't really talk about it with my parents. I don't know. They don't have a will. They don't want to talk about it. They think that if you talk about it, then you're wishing them dead or something. It's hard. I mean, we do have this culture gap with them. I do with my parents.
When my mom was diagnosed, my brother's first reaction is not tell her. So I insisted that we had to tell her. I don't want to do the same thing like what we did to my dad. Tell her that she has to face this, and we have to face it together. And she can make arrangement and things that we want to do for her. So we told her, and I'm sure she will have to deal with it for a while. But at the end, we can openly go and discuss about treatment options. And I start going back to see her as much as I could. But she ended up lived for another 2 years. Went back to play concert for her.
Yeah, she had good quality life.
Yeah, took kids back to visit her, spend time with her, all that stuff. And then she also had other support from her relatives, her niece, her cousin. They all came to visit her, that kind of stuff. She just, you have to find the peace and deal with it.
Yeah.
So I guess my next question is, what would be something you'd like to say, for example, when your children or grandchildren or great-grandchildren finds this archive in our library at the Fondren Library? What would you say to them? And what would your advice be to them?
What I would say, that most important thing in our lives is love to your family. Find your own happiness and be true to yourself. So that's kind of my life philosophy. And also believe in yourself, to stick with your own principles and integrity. And the most important is finding happiness. Everything else is less important.
Yeah. I actually don't have anything to add to that. As different as we are in personality and even philosophy of life, I just really truly believe in love, the love between parent and children, the love between, husband and wife. And I feel like that love is kind of limitless, I don't, and there is all kinds of love, and this love is enduring, and I want my children to find the love in their life and make connections with the people who are important to them, and just be true to those relationships, and that we're not alone, that they always have us, and even when we're gone, they have passed on, hopefully, our memories and that we made together. Yeah.
Well, one more thing I can say is, if our kids, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, is going to watch this one day, it's just be kind to others.
Yeah, be kind.
Be kind to others. big heart.
Great. Is there anything else you'd like to add or share?
I think we're good.
Yeah.
That was really nice.
Yeah,